Hello and welcome to how I made my Scorbunny ears. Here's the final product. I think they look pretty good. Alright, so to start off you're gonna create a stencil based on a screenshot of Scorbunny's spiky ear. You're gonna trace it out onto foam. I'd recommend using white foam because you're using white fur. But you're gonna cut out 4 pieces, 2 of the spiky side and 2 of the not spiky side. You're going to stuff the ears with these later. And then you're going to trace onto the fur, make sure it's laying in the right direction. You're going to stencil once right around the stencil, and then you're going to go around again about 1/2 inch off. The inner line is so that you can sew on that line. I at least need that reference. And then the outer line is where you cut for the seam allowance. Alright, and when you go to sew this, you are going to pin it and you're going to try to make sure that the fur is tucked in to the side so that you have less work to do later when you have to pull the hair out of the seams. Using those clamps also works well. Alright, so you're going to go in and sew, and using that inner line. It looks faster, but this actually took me a little while. I don't have a great machine, so I didn't want to screw anything up. My machine's really dirty, I need to clean it off. So yeah, make sure you leave space at the bottom so that you can flip it inside out easily, because you can always go back and hand sew it in tighter if you need. But yeah, make sure that fur is tucked in as well as you can tuck it in. Yeah, and then trim off some of the seams so that it looks better when you flip it inside out. It's less lumpy. But be careful of the fur because you don't want to cut too much of the fur out, or else you'll just have like fur falling out of the seams. Yeah, and turning it inside out took me a little longer than it was supposed to because I sewed my hole really small. Yeah, and then you have to shove something in there to make it pointy at the ends. And then I started picking the hairs out of the seams. I used a little screwdriver and then I used scissors, not the sharp edge. I used whatever object I thought could fit in there, but be careful not to tear the seams. Alright, and look how fluffy they are. At this point you can shave them down if you wanted to. I thought about it, but I actually really like the fluffy look, so I decided to leave them fluffy. And then we're going to make the skeleton with the foam pieces you made earlier. Cut a piece of wire and glue it down into the center of the sandwich, of the foam sandwich. And the wire needs to be longer than I made it here. I actually had to go in and do extra work because I made my wires too short. But make sure that they're long enough to wrap around the headband. I did not. So learn from my mistakes. And then when you're done with that, you're going to shove it into the ear hole as well as you can. And on the one that has the spiky edge, make sure that the foam is into the spiky edge. Sorry, this is out of focus. But at this point, you're going to take your stencil and figure out where like the center part of the ear is and trim the hair down using clippers or scissors in that area because you're going to paint it in a minute. I didn't include footage of me painting it, but if this wasn't out of focus, you'd see that the hair in the center is shorter based on the stencil, and then you'll paint it like a lightish yellow-orange. Be careful not to cut hair. You're gonna have to pull it aside to make sure you're cutting where you need to cut. Alright, and then the painting. So you can airbrush this, which would look nicer, and I was going to do, but my airbrush was taking too long to come in the mail. So just dab like acrylic paint on there. It turns out better if you water it down more, but I didn't want to do as many coats, so I just kind of glomped it on there. So I know this sounds scary, but what you're going to do is brush it out later, and then it'll become fluffy again. So do the ombre. You do orange and red, and I didn't show it in this video, but what I end up doing is doing like a red-orange between the orange and the red, and doing like a white-orange between the orange and the white. So it has a nice fade to it. But yeah, this looks really gross, but I promise once it's done, it'll look a lot better. And don't do what I'm doing right now. Don't use the brush on wet paint, because then you'll ruin your brush. I was just being impatient. But yeah, you might have to go back and fill in some of the missing spots. Since it's fur, it's kind of hard to get in all of the areas. But yeah. Oh, sorry for the low quality, but my camera died, so I used my phone instead. So this is me brushing out the wig hair, or I guess this is annoying, the fur hair. Sometimes there's pieces that are a little bit more chunky and you have to go in there and fix them, but see how fluffy it looks, especially in the red part? Yeah, you just keep doing that for a while and it'll end up looking floofy. But I think using an airbrush is probably better, but if you don't have an airbrush, this also works just fine. And then I used a headband, and I had to do it differently because I did it wrong, but use the wires to wrap around the headband and glue it in, and then shove the wires back up into the ears. And here's the finished the finished product. I put cheap earrings on to have a little bit more of a summer flair. I got those glasses on Amazon. I thought they kind of suit the look. Oh, this wig. I Sharpie dyed it and it does not look great, but it's good enough for a dumb summer cosplay. I bought this and it came with silver spikes, and I added gold ones instead because they suit Score Bunny better. Yeah. The swimsuit has makeup on it, so ignore that, but I just used a white swimsuit that I had laying around, and I added spikes and painted orange and red on it. And these shoes I painted white, and then I used painter's tape to add the red toes, and then I sewed little fur balls, and I hot glued them onto the back of the shoes. I would have used E6000 if I wanted this to be permanent, but since this is just a quick summer cosplay, I want to be able to take off the fluffs. Alright, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you!